Hello, everyone, and welcome to In Time. My name is Nicholas Lamar Soutter, and this is my co-host, Ansgar.
Hey, hello everybody.
And I really have to, they're right. I have to say, I say Ansgar because that's what I call him. But Ansgar Odinson, I don't like to use his full name because has so much more gravitas than my own. I don't like to
I
advertise it.
actually do need to address something at the top of this show. I've been getting some interesting remarks regarding mostly my appearance, and I just have to say that people seem to think that I am the amazing atheist TJ Kirk.
Ah.
And I have to say, all of us blondies with beards don't look alike. That is a racial stereotype, and I will not stand for it.
Okay. Well, I think that is certainly worthy of discussion, and obviously it is a critical issue that we will address at some point. We have it on the calendar for when the intersection of Snowball meets Hell, but other than that, it's a priority, Ansgar. But
Okay,
I'm
okay.
glad you
As
cleared
long
that
as
up.
it's a priority. Hey, wait a
It is.
minute.
You guys did the math on that. I think. Okay. All right. So let's see. If you are watching on the GDC, thank you very much for joining us, and thank you to Steve McCrae for hosting us there. Please like and subscribe, and you can come on over also. There should be a link there to our channel if you want to come and see us on our channel. We have a couple of stories that we're working on. We're going to be updating a number of them. The non sequitur story has had some updates. Ansgar, I don't remember if I told you, but we discovered last night, Cheshire Vic and Red's Rhetoric were on Drunken Peasants, and they announced that it appears as if Kyle Curtis has been served officially
Oh.
of a complaint, by Steve McCrae. This obviously, this is something that we had expected, and we don't know a lot about what's in it, but we know some. Steve has, and a few people in Steve's talked about it in a couple of streams. I think there's some things that we need to discuss and we'll update on. So hopefully we'll get to do that tomorrow and update people with sort of our view on where Mr. Curtis stands now, what the implication is for the show, which he is, by the way, he has announced he is mothballing non-sec, that non-sec is over and he will not be broadcasting from it again. So there's a few things to unpack there. So we will be doing that hopefully tomorrow. If you want to find out about that, you should go to our channel, subscribe, and hit the bell so that you'll get notification when we put that up. You'll also find a link to our Patreon, which is a great way to help the show, and patrons get backstage access, hangouts, discounts on merchandise, and priority chat, Discord. You can join our Discord. You'll find that in the description too, and priority after party access. And we even like to discuss future topics and show ideas with our patrons. So I hope you'll consider doing that. Ansgar in particular, really could use the extra couple bucks. So we were streaming live when his car got devastated. So you got to see him, Ansgar, if you wanna so
Yeah, there's
that was
actually a
fun.
video up on my channel explaining what happened, but a woman ran into a line of parked cars, mine included. Uh, Good news is my car wasn't the first car she hit. Bad news is that means it got sandwiched in between two cars. So
Oh.
I've discovered today that the keyless entry doesn't work on top of all the other damages, including doors not opening and all kinds of horrible shit. The frame is good. Frame is good. I can say that much. But the problem is that California only requires people to have a maximum of $5,000 of property damage coverage, which means that
Oh, oh,
$5,000 will be split among the 5 different vehicles they got hit, which is not even going to come close to fixing my vehicle. This is a problem. Yeah.
so I understand there are people out there who aren't fans of me personally, and I get that. I really do. I'm a caustic guy. I trigger people. But if you like Ansgar, and if you want Hat and him to stay so they're not homeless, consider the Patreon. Uh, well, we also take super chats. The link is should be right at the top of the description if you want to do super chats. We really appreciate it. So we will discuss the non sequitur story tomorrow. We'll be discussing a couple of other stories. We've got a number of ones we're working on. So like and subscribe if you want to be notified of that. Today we have on Jim Majors, who is a good friend of mine. I am thrilled to have him on, and we are here to discuss biblical prophecy. Jim, how are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, a genuine pleasure, my friend. But this is now. So you've kind of caused a bit of a stir. You are, in fact, literally an expert in biblical prophecy. I have gone to you before when I want to discuss these matters. I engage as an anti-theist on occasion, and this is really what you do. So let me ask, what is it that you wanted to discuss today? Because I'm told you have some shocking news.
I do indeed. It's it's not easy to say, and it's not an easy thing to talk about. But biblical prophecy is something that I have I've researched and I've studied quite a bit. There are a lot of people who have studied and they know the normal prophecies of the Antichrist and the prophecies of the coming Messiah and so on and so forth. And through studying them, I've discovered some things that even as an atheist, it's really hard to admit.
Okay.
So I just wanted to share that with you guys today.
All right. So Ansgar, I'm told that this is going to be concerning, and I'm not sure where he's going to go with this, but I am geared up. I'm about as ready as I'm ever going to be. I don't know how you are.
Uh,
Well, considering I've got my, finger on the button to allow him to present, I'm not sure that it would be, the wisest thing to click that button. Do you think I should?
Let's do it. Let's do it. I'm ready.
All
I'm
right,
ready.
all right. Here we go. Donald Trump, the Antichrist.
Friends, family, Ansgar, Nick, Donald Trump is the Antichrist, and I can prove it. Just bear
Well,
with
I
me.
didn't need biblical prophecy to tell me that, but okay.
Just bear with me. This is I know that this may seem prodigal and this may seem a little far fetched, but just give me a few to state my case.
Go
Okay.
for it.
The Antichrist is supposed to be the exact opposite of Jesus, yet the same. It's supposed to be kind of like an evil mirror image. Jesus started his ministry at 30, and Donald Trump, uh, at the age of 30 was prophesied by Pat Cadell, who was a campaign operative of Jimmy Carter. The Antichrist, according to 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, verses 3 through 10,
my God.
is supposed to be a man of lawlessness. Here, not only do we see the president sexually assaulting an ex-president, we see
Okay.
we see that
my.
the coming of the
Okay.
lawless one is by the activity of Satan with all powers and false signs and wonders, and with all wicked deception for those who are perishing because they refuse to love the truth and so be saved. And we all know that Trump is great at deceiving, and it may not seem convincing yet.
Hold on. Is that a real
He's
picture?
a great blasphemer.
I want to know if that was photoshopped or.
Is that real? Did he really?
No, yes. That is absolutely real.
Oh my
Oh
God.
my
Okay.
God.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah,
All right.
no,
All right.
that is not
This
Photoshop.
is scary. This is okay.
Blasphemer. It says, like he's the king of Israel. They love him like he's the second coming of God. Isaiah 44:6 says, thus saith the Lord, the King of Israel. I am the first and I am the last.
I
And
know
beside
that
me
tweet.
there is no God.
That tweet just came out. That's a real. Okay. That's good.
Trump says they'll be hit so goddamn hard. And if you don't support me, you're going to be so goddamn poor. The Archangel Michael is supposed to descend from heaven, or the Lord will descend with the voice of the Archangel, and the Archangel is Michael, and with the trump of God. We know that Michael and Trump, Mike Pence and Donald Trump. But what is a trump? Well, a trump is a little horn. Daniel 7:8 tells us, while I was thinking about the horns, there before me was another horn,
Jesus.
a little one,
Okay.
which came from amongst them. And 3 of the first horns were uprooted before it. This horn had eyes like the eyes of a human being and a mouth that spoke boastfully. That sounds a lot like Trump. Now, it says that 3 of the first horns were uprooted before it. A lot of people don't know, but Trump has 3 older siblings. You have Fred.
Okay.
It's very damning evidence. I'm telling you.
Okay.
and
Floyd FP is in the chat. He also does, and he says he is already convinced.
It is very convincing. And
Okay.
it says later on in verse 20, it says, and of the 10 horns that were in his head, and of the other which came up, and before whom 3 fell, his 3 older siblings, even of that horn that had eyes and a mouth that spoke very great things, whose look was more stout than his fellows. And here we have Donald Trump tweeting, talking about his fellow Elizabeth Warren, saying, so great looking and smart, a true stable genius, referring to himself.
Oh my.
Donald Trump made covenant with Israel. Halfway through, he will crown himself God in the temple. Here we see Revelation being fulfilled. As you know, the beast in Revelation is fueled by the dragon being the devil himself. And here you have Kanye West tweeting, we are both dragon energy. And Donald Trump confirms this, saying, thank you, Kanye. Very cool.
Okay. I should have guessed Kanye would show up in here somewhere.
Donald,
oh my God.
Here we have Jared Kushner's property is the most expensive Trump property, once valued at $666 billion at 666 Fifth Avenue. Fifth Avenue, as you know, is the street of money, the street of wealth, and they tell us to in the Bible to beware of Mammon, which this is the street of wealth.
Wait a minute. That was actually 666, the
Yes.
address, and it was worth 600, valued at 666.
I think it's 100.
That's
well, that's absolutely true. That was Kushner's. That's the one that Kushner's. He may get into trouble like money laundering the whole, but that's the address. It's 666.
That's right. That's right.
That's
okay.
Wow.
The Antichrist is also supposed to be born of the tribe of Dan. Dan, who most people don't know, is the son of Jacob and Rachel's maidservant, his wife's maidservant. Well, Mary McLeod, who is Trump's mother, was a maidservant when she first came to America. So Trump is from a line of maidservants, which fulfills the prophecy. There's absolutely no denying it. Matthew 24:21, Jesus tells us that there will be great suffering, such as has not been from the beginning of the world until now. And here we have Donald Trump saying, "Never ever threaten the United States again, or you will suffer consequences the likes of which throughout history have ever suffered
Oh
before."
God. Oh God. Okay. This is really
So,
I'm starting to think we should have done this.
fathers, mothers, hold your children tight because the Antichrist is here.
Oh wow. Okay, I just want to point out that we've got like a large number of viewers on the GDC, and they fall completely silent. They don't want to. Nobody's talking. Oh my God.
I mean, it's not an easy thing to talk about, but this is something that really should be talked about.
Okay. What do you? I've got a point of criticism from the chat. Real quick.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Richard Russ, what do you say to Trump is not smart enough to be the devil?
Oh, but you see, he is a tool of the devil. You don't have to be smart to be a puppet.
Yeah, he's
See?
supposed to be the Antichrist. I think Floyd had
Right.
said
The,
something.
the Antichrist isn't the devil. Rather, the Antichrist is a tool of the devil.
Oh my God. Okay, no, this was interesting. I'm really not. No, this is why
Okay.
biblical.
No, I'm just going to say that I completely fabricated all of this. Now, all of these verses are true. These verses are all true. Every application that I made of Trump to the Antichrist is true. But this just goes to show you how easy it is to manipulate prophecy post hoc and say,
Oh my God.
look, this applies to this, and just retrofit the prophecy towards whatever you're wanting to do, which is exactly what people do to Psalm 22, what they do to Daniel 7, Daniel 9, Isaiah 53. I mean, all of these messianic prophecies, none of them at the time had any predictive power. They still don't have any predictive power. It's all done after the fact.
I'm curious. How?
So you're not saying that Trump is the Antichrist?
No, Trump is not the Antichrist.
Oh, okay.
Okay. I have
Or
a
is
question.
he?
How difficult was this to put together, to do the research, to make this a thing?
Oh, it wasn't hard at all. It's not hard at all. It's
It's
not hard. It is not hard. As a matter of fact, the majority of this I put together in less than an hour on a whim. The first time that I presented.
Oh my
Seriously.
God.
So biblical prophecy is that easy to manipulate?
Absolutely. It is so easy to manipulate because it is so ambiguous.
Holy crap.
Okay, well, Ansgar, I think we owe him a round of applause. It's gonna be the two of us, but that was oh my God.
Honestly,
wow.
we're not going to, but we could end the show here, and it was a successful show.
Actually, you're right. We really could. I want to discuss. I mean, this opens up so many questions, but that was well, thank you for that. Oh my God. Oh, okay. We have a comment. Trump is a tool. Well, good. I guess there are a lot of people who agree with that.
Yeah,
one,
see, a
but-
lot of people agree.
yeah, people agree. Okay. Well, wow, where to begin? So I get a lot of people. I get into arguments with biblical prophecy. The ones that I hear most are Daniel and Ezekiel, and I'm always told that they're actually really, really precise. How precise are these?
I would say that Daniel is very precise. I would even say that Ezekiel is very precise. But the problem is that they're so precise, like they actually kind of damn themselves. In fact, Daniel is just a reworking of another prophecy that failed, and he's saying, oh well, that's not really what he meant. What he meant is this, and Daniel also purports to be, or actually, it presents itself as being authored 400, 500 years before it was actually authored, so as to give the illusion of prophecy.
Oh, okay. So two things with that one then. So Daniel was purportedly written in 600 BC.
Correct.
And,
600 to 700. Yeah, right.
okay, and so what you're telling me now is that that's not the case.
Right. It was really authored during the middle of the 2nd century.
How on earth can anyone know that?
Oh, because up until a certain point, we see Daniel being very, very specific of having, I mean, just really, really nails all of the prophecy leading up to the second century, the middle of the second century. And then all of a sudden he starts using more illusionary, like a lot of iconography, just being really vague. Um, and and one of the first prophecies that he gets wrong is the death of the king. He gets that one wrong. Uh, and pretty much everything after that he gets wrong.
Oh,
So
so he
well,
did get one. He did get one
and a
wrong.
lot of the things that are used in the text, a lot of the grammar and the syntax that's used in the text is are syntax and grammar that is comparable to mid second century text. I'm sorry, mid second century BCE, just to be clear.
Okay, so now I've seen, and there Floyd FP is in the live chat. I'm a huge fan of his work, and especially when he and Ozzy get together. Floyd FP did with Deeper Than Dogma a video that I've referred to often, which was, and I think I sent you this video. I don't know what you thought of it, but it was
I enjoyed it.
yeah. Let's see, it was a biblical prophecy with Daniel, and he had mentioned similar objections. That, and you had said this before too, like as at least one instrument in Daniel didn't exist until the second century BC.
Right. Well, and Daniel was never originally considered to be prophetic. It wasn't listed in the book of the prophets. They weren't considered. He wasn't considered a lesser prophet or a later prophet. Rather, the book of Daniel was put into the category that the Hebrews called the writings, which none of them were considered prophetic. Daniel is the only text that today is considered to be prophetic that was never considered prophetic then.
Okay, so we just sort of change that after the fact.
Right.
So I guess that could explain. I like that plan. So if I want to be a prophet, all I have to do is say I wrote something 200 years ago and predict the Trump getting elected and all that other stuff, and poof, prophet. So I like that. Ansgar, could you do me a huge favor and sort of put that sort of in the business notes for like next week to just we'll each become prophets, and we'll pick something. So just become a prophet. I think that's a great part of our business plan. We'll be incorporating that. But didn't he? I mean, he did successfully, like to the year, if I understand. And somebody brought up S.J. Thomason loves Daniel, and he did to the year predict the coming and death of Jesus Christ. Did he not?
No, he did not. And no,
Okay.
and it really takes a lot of manipulation, a lot of bending, and ignoring a lot of contemporary practices that they would have seen around the time that Daniel was actually written. So it's like supposedly the year 36 is the end of like the 490 years. But if you take off some years, you know what, she really it's just really jacked up. It would take me forever to tell you all the intricacies and things that she takes out and adds to it in order to get there. In fact, over time, we see even the church fathers who have a different understanding of this 70 weeks of 7 prophecies.
Okay, so Daniel had said that well, his overall prediction. So I guess he said that the Messiah would be cut off after 62 weeks of years. Is that roughly accurate?
I think that's right, or maybe it was 68. No, maybe no, it was 62. That's right.
Okay. So and I guess nobody entirely knows what cut off means, but I guess you could.
They say that cut off. What Christians today say, they say cut off means to die.
Okay. Oh, okay.
Or that they were split off and grew another shoot. That they say that's what that means. There's many different ways to interpret it. It kind of depends on what argument they're trying to use, and that's what depends on what interpretation they use.
All right. So now, somebody here in the live chat suggested that that maybe the selection for who was Jesus was determined by Daniel more than anything else. Is there anything to that argument? So that maybe if Daniel landed on a different date, was there maybe another person who we might have said was Jesus or was
No,
the Christ?
no.
Or nope. Okay.
No, the claims of Daniel being prophecy were done after Jesus' death.
Oh, okay. Okay. So, what is your favorite? Do you think well, actually, yeah, two questions, I guess, and I'm sure Ansgar's got a load of questions. But so, what is your favorite elements of prophecy, and what is your favorite part of doing this and examining this? Do you think?
My favorite one. I honestly I like Revelation. I like Revelation because so many people think that it refers to future events. Whenever it's so easy and evident to just say no, that's not it at all. This is it.
So
Um,
that's your favorite, yeah.
it was like, in other words, what I'm trying to say is all of Revelation is stuff that has already come to pass. All of the prophecies, quote unquote, all the predictions. These are things that came to pass, 2,000 years, well, not almost 2,000 years ago.
And so if there was any merit to any of these, basically it should have happened a very long time ago, which is sort of what the Bible says anyway, that Jesus is coming soon. I mean, it's been Jesus has been coming soon, as I understand it, for the last 2,000 years. I mean, he's been
Right.
right around the corner for the last 2,000 years. So
Right. There's a couple different places where Jesus says, like surely I tell you that there are some amongst you who stand here today that will not taste death until I return, or that this generation will not pass away until my return. Things like that.
okay, so anyone who says that, okay, now that's where is that where the wandering Jew comes from?
The
The idea
wandering
of
Jew.
the wandering Jew.
Well, I mean, I don't, I really don't know. I would think that the wandering Jew probably came from like the Old Testament, where it took Moses so long to get through the desert.
Okay. All right. So, but clearly, so everybody has passed away, and so okay. So it seems to me that there are some issues with biblical prophecy. Ansgar, have you got any questions?
Yeah, I've got a few. Do you think that these prophecies were set up almost like I guess how should I put it? So like when considering you're talking about how a lot of these prophecies are added, or are reinterpreted later or whatever, right?
Mhm.
Are we talking about something that somebody literally made a prophecy and people are later forcing it to fit? Or do you think that people are going back and saying this person made a prophecy after they see events happen?
Sure. So, for example, like when we look at the Synoptic Gospels and the Gospel writers, we see instances where they take the Greek Septuagint, which is a translation of the Hebrew Old Testament, and searching through it and finding things that would possibly apply to Jesus, or could apply to Jesus, that they can kind of mix into the story. And we see the synoptic authors doing this in different ways that the other one doesn't always do. Like, for example, Matthew, in the infancy narrative of Jesus, they set it up in a way to where Herod tries to kill Jesus, and Jesus as a baby has to flee with Mary and Joseph into Egypt until Herod dies. And that's because the author of Matthew thought that Hosea 11:1 was a prophecy where it says, "Out of Egypt did I call my son." The author of Matthew in general tries to tie parallels to Moses. Herod being a parallel to the Pharaoh, and killing the infants is a parallel to the Pharaoh. And yet in Luke, for example, we don't see King Herod trying to kill Jesus. We don't see them going to Egypt. We just see Jesus getting circumcised at 8 days, going up to the temple in Jerusalem to perform his purification rites, and then just going home to Galilee like there was no problem.
Okay.
How much do you think the New Testament, because this is an objection I think a lot of people have, that the New Testament was really written with the Old Testament in mind, and written sort of so that Matthew might have added elements to fulfill Daniel or other prophecies.
Mhm.
How much do you think that has happened?
Absolutely, 100%. But there's evidence that they didn't only do the Old Testament, but that they did it with the Greek translation of the Old Testament. So they weren't even using the original Hebrew. You have them saying things like Jesus must be born of a virgin, thinking that that's supposed to be an actual prophecy. Yet in the Hebrew, they don't even use the word for virgin. They use the word for young maiden, and they take that word and they translate it into the Greek word parthenos, which uh, necessarily, or what I'm sorry, which necessitates it being a virgin.
All right. Okay. So essentially, there is what you're saying is there's evidence in the New Testament of actually working off of a translation of the Old Testament and trying to coax what they had seen, or the narrative that they wanted to tell, into to fit the narrative of the Old Testament. So is that,
Yes.
yeah, wow.
And Matthew does it in the most hilarious way, I think. Like the triumphant entry into Jerusalem, where Jesus is riding a donkey. It's now that is an actual messianic prophecy. However, we see Matthew. We can tell that it's not from an eyewitness. Matthew clearly takes this from the Old Testament, because he takes this takes it from the Hebrew, what in the Hebrew is a literary device called synonymous parallelism, and it's where they say two things in two different ways back to back. And so they talk about Jesus riding into Jerusalem, or the Messiah riding into Jerusalem uh, on a on a donkey, the foal of an ass, or on an ass, the foal of a donkey, one of the two. And Matthew reads it thinking, oh, well, it looks like Jesus is riding two donkeys here, or the Messiah is supposed to be riding two donkeys here in the Old Testament. So I guess I'm just going to write it like that. Well, the other instances that it's written in the Synoptic Gospels, uh, they only take one donkey, but Matthew's like, oh, but it says two donkeys, and so he has Jesus literally riding two donkeys into Jerusalem, because he doesn't understand the parallelism, and because he's reading it from the Greek translation.
Oh my.
Wow.
Okay. Well, yeah, well, and I'm used to hearing all the time that the Bible is inerrant, and it can be hard to deal with it, because I do think there's a lot of people who sort of post hoc retranslate it, stuff like that. But to actually see how the Bible was put together, um, it is a little stunning. Uh,
Yeah.
so what is your opinion then on Jesus Christ, and sort of the events that evolved, that happened around him? Historians in general say that he was real, that he did exist.
Mhm.
Obviously, most historians don't think that he did any of the things that he did. Were these people trying to create the Messiah, trying to create a new religion? Was that their intent? Was somebody else trying to do this? Was this Constantine sort of after the fact trying to create a new religion? What is going on here?
Well, I believe that early on in Jesus's ministry, that Jesus's followers did believe that he was the Messiah. Uh, However, whenever Jesus died, then that's whenever they had to start making shit up, because not only was the Messiah never supposed to die, but the Messiah was never supposed to be resurrected. Out of all of the messianic prophecies, quote unquote, in the Old Testament, you can find some where the Messiah is supposed to be crushed and bruised for our iniquities, and pierced, and all these other things, but you don't see a rising Jesus. You don't see a rising Messiah. You don't see the Son of God being killed. Well, you don't see the Messiah being the Son of God. Period. So I mean, there's a lot of things that are added to it. I think that Jesus was a real person. I think that he was baptized by John the Baptist. I think that he was crucified by Rome, uh, by Roman rule. I think that that either he claimed or he was claimed as the King of the Jews. I do not believe he was the Messiah. I do not believe he was raised from the dead. Then there's plenty of scriptural evidence to prove this.
It almost feels like from your explanation that you had this, kind of small cult. And I don't mean that in a bad way, but I mean that in the more historical sense of the word cult.
We culture the yeah.
Right. Well, and that's how any belief starts off as. They start off as a
Right.
small cult, and
Yeah.
there were other beliefs about Jesus at the time that started off as the same small cult, but through
Right.
popular consensus, they lost out, and they were people like the Ebionites, the people like the I mean, there were a lot of adoptionists who believed that Jesus wasn't even the Son of God,
Right.
that didn't become the Son of God until he died on the cross, and then God adopted him.
But it seems to me like you have this small cult that springs up that lauds this folk hero as the Messiah, and then he gets killed, and they're like, shit, okay,
We got a
what do we do
problem.
now? I know. He came back to life. He told us all that he's going back to heaven and that we're doing a great job. Bye. He left a set of instructions.
Like
Right.
yeah.
Right. Well, and we see that Jesus was I believe that Jesus was afraid of being executed. I believe that he evaded persecution. There's a lot of evidence in the scripture that he did not want to be persecuted, not just the prayer in the Garden of Gethsemane, but other things like showing up late and in disguise to the Feast of the Tabernacle, or to the Feast of Tabernacles. Sorry.
I had not heard that before.
Yeah, where Jesus shows up in the middle of the feast, which isn't just a 1 day thing, but well, prior to the feast, the apostles tell him, come with us. You need to come with us, because the Feast of the Tabernacles was one of the three mandatory feast or mandatory rites that all male Jews had to go through, and Jesus was refusing to go. He was like, "No, you guys go. You guys go. I'm going to stay here." And they say,
You
"But
got
Lord,
this.
there's so many people here who have not seen your miracles. You need to come." And he ends up coming way later in disguise, waiting for the judges and everybody to go back inside so nobody would notice him, because they had people at the gates who would guard people, or who were guards checking people as they were coming in, like, are you wanted? Are you wanted? And they were on the lookout for certain people, Jesus being one of them. And then it says in the text that Jesus comes to the temple in disguise in the middle of the feast and starts preaching in disguise.
So, what I want to know is, why do you think these biblical prophecies, or prophecies in general, are so easy to sell to people? Why are they so easy to make people believe?
Because they are so ambiguous that you can fit them however you want, just like I did with Donald Trump.
Well, what I'm curious though is, why is it so? Why are we so difficult, or I should say, why is it so easy to subvert our intuition? Why don't we more easily see through that kind of a, you know, bait, really?
Well, I think it's, first of all, our tendency to see patterns in things, and that
Hmm.
once we see those patterns, I believe that it's really easy to convince somebody whenever you don't just have one piece of evidence, but you have several different links that make sense. And we, by the identification of patterns, we put 2 plus 2 together and 4 plus 4 together, and we figure out, okay, this is 8. All these pieces lined up together. So I'm just going to assume from here on out that all the other pieces are going to line up as well. So it just depends, from person to person. I think everybody has their own standard of acceptance
Right.
that the evidence meets or does not meet. And then once you meet that evidence, I believe that you can convince a person of just about anything, especially when it comes to prophecy.
Um, that there's a specific figure I want to ask you about. I know you specialize in biblical prophecy, but I'd love to get you to comment, only because he's so popular in pop culture and so many people bring him up when you talk about prophecies. Is Nostradamus?
Hmm.
Is there anything you'd like? a lot of his when I was when especially when I was a teenager, you see some special on cable, and they're showing these prophecies that seem so accurate, and some of his prophecies seem very specific. They don't seem
Yeah. Oh
um
yeah.
vague at all. What are your thoughts on that?
I, I mean, yeah, I will agree with you that some of them seem very convincing, but at the same time, I can and have taken those same Nostradamus prophecies and applied them to something else, and it fit up the exact same way. It's all about finding the pattern and applying it.
Right. Does Nicholas's chair have a comment?
No, Nick. Well, Nick's chair is just chillaxing while Nick gets
Okay.
coffee. Yes, well, Nick's chair. Yeah. So the Nostradamus thing, I was like, it is kind of spooky how precise it is, but you got to wonder if you're hearing it the way it really is, or it's like
Yeah.
and lo, Nick and Ansgar started a show together, and lo, it was successful. I was like, okay, that's pretty scary. I hear that written, a couple
Yeah,
hundred
but
years
in order to
ago.
be a prophecy, it has to be true.
Oh,
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 oh, shots
oh,
fired.
shots fired. Yeah, okay.
Oh.
I think a clown face is about to get pasted by our graphics guy right onto Jim's face. I would do that, but I don't want to improve his image anymore. So, uh,
Oh.
um,
Damn, I
I
feel
just
like I
don't
got
like
like Jerry
where you
Springer
went.
up in here.
yes, we're all gonna
We're
hug
even
it.
now.
Hey, Jim, you want a piece of me? You want a piece of me, Jim? Come on. I
I
come down.
mean,
I come down even to see you, and you're just like, oh, Nick, you're 4 hours away. I don't want to. You know how many thousands of miles I went just to hang with you, bro? And you're just like, you couldn't do 4 hours. I did 3 days. You couldn't do 4 hours.
that's not
I,
even what happened, man, and you know it.
um,
uh,
no, but
okay.
Nostradamus really is one of those ones that he's so prolific in the pop culture. You see him on the History Channel, where truth is history. You see him on Discovery Channel. You see him on all of these. Anytime somebody wants to make a case for some random thing, it's Nostradamus that's brought up, right?
Hmm.
And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to ask, because I think that most people are not necessarily as up on their biblical prophecy, but you'd be hard pressed to find someone who hasn't heard of Nostradamus,
Right.
who
Yeah, I agree.
supposedly predicted Hitler and a bunch of other random events. I think the San Francisco earthquake, I think supposedly he predicted. A few others. But do you think that biblical and these prophecies, like Nostradamus, are crafted intentionally to be ambiguous, or do these people really believe what they were trying to sell?
Neither and both, I guess. So like the author of
I'm so
Daniel,
glad you're here.
Hmm.
Yeah. Neither
so
and both. Thanks, Jim.
yeah, well,
You
so
you cleared that up real well. Thank you.
the author of Daniel, he obviously had an agenda. The author of Daniel knew that he was writing about events that had already taken place, and knew that he was positing them in a time that they weren't actually written. So he knew that he was falsifying this. So it was done with malice, I believe, or done with the intent of passing it off as
Okay.
truth. Right. And so I do believe that there was an agenda. And for example, like in Revelation, for example, a lot of it that had already come to pass, was true. But the stuff that was said about the future was done to encourage the Jews and to strengthen the Jews, and to help them strengthen their convictions and give them hope, and say, don't worry, the end's almost here. The end's almost here. And in fact, that's what you see in all the messianic prophecies, is the Jews that are in times of peril, who are being told by these prophecies, just one more day, just hang on. The Lord's almost here. The Lord's almost here.
So, so it's sort of a grab bag. Then you have some prophecies that are written with malice, as you say, and do you think that there's a subset of people who write down these prophecies or make these predictions who honestly believe them,
Oh, of course.
or Okay.
Oh, wait. You mean like in the future? Like they believe like what's
Yeah,
going to
like
happen in the
okay,
future?
like do you think, for instance, let's take, since we were just talking about Nostradamus, do you think he believed what he was writing?
No, no. I believe that there was some agenda for some of the things that he was writing, but I don't believe that he was just writing these things just to write them. And I do believe that there are some people who are afflicted by mental conditions who do may believe that they are true. But as far as people being in their right mind, writing these things down, believing that they are actually going to come true, like say the author of Revelation, did he really believe that there is going to be the kingdom of God return to earth? You know, I don't believe so.
Because in I've had some some mingling in like the psychic and that kind of community, and they make these kinds of predictions, and I would say at least in that community, probably about 80% of them really believe what they're shoveling, and they have a natural, and many of them have an innate cold reading ability. They're not even trained, they're just innate, especially when you talk about the people who are kind of more in the amateur, you know what I mean, they're not making lots and lots of money. We're not talking about like the oh, what's his name, the I'm sentencing somebody with an A name
Oh,
over here kind of
Yeah,
thing,
yeah.
yeah,
not
right.
Oh,
that
yeah.
guy. But when you're talking about on the smaller scale, a lot of them have this sort of innate cold read ability that they, once they've learned how to do that, kind of without even thinking about it, they're making these vague predictions and they're convincing themselves of their own psychic ability. So I
Sure,
wonder
but
if some of these so-called prophets don't do
Mm.
something similar. You know what I mean?
well, but a lot of a lot of these cold readings, you know, are I would say most, if not all of them, are done in present time. You know, they're done
Right.
to a person. It's never about a future event that they're cold reading. You know, unless it's extremely ambiguous, in which case you can go on, you know, ad infinitum and it be fulfilled eventually. But most of the cold readings are done about things that are in time, or like assessments of a person, or their character. I don't believe that any cold reading is always cold. You know what I mean? I believe
Oh yeah.
there's some warmth to every reading.
For sure. But I mean, they do like to make predictions about the future, but like you said, they keep it vague. What I'm
Mhm.
saying is, I don't necessarily think that that's always intentional. I think that there's a certain number of these people that have learned sort of to unconsciously make these sort of vague, washy predictions, and they've convinced themselves that they really do have powers, and after the fact they'll say, oh look, I predicted that, I predicted that.
Sure,
I
sure.
will say, to jump on a little bit of an aside, but along those lines, 'cause I do like that line of thinking. So I was a Christian. Not like I didn't think of myself as a Christian. I did believe in sort of I believed in the Judeo-Christian God. I didn't necessarily. I was iffy on who was Jesus and did all of it happen exactly like it was in the Bible. But I was a Christian. But one of the things that convinced me was I actually routinely thought I was talking to God. And I think we all have a voice in our heads, not necessarily one that speaks, but we've got an intuition that speaks to us. And I had really tricked myself into thinking that I could, because I was very intuitive about other people. And I tricked myself into thinking that intuition was God telling me. It was just my own psyche. And I was actually able to prove it. I deconverted myself. It just was a process whereby I started to collect errors and realize that I had been only what is it when you only see the confirmation bias? So just like, wait a minute, I think I've had other errors, and I think I've screwed this up before, but I'm not really looking at it. But uh, so I think, Ansgar, that I really like where you just went with that, because that's actually, I think, really what happened to me as a Christian. I'd fooled myself into thinking, and I think that what you just said happens probably a lot more than most people give credit for, where they've tricked themselves into believing and seeing what it's that guy who thought that he had predicted exactly when. Remember, he had predicted exactly when the end of the world was going to come, and he sold his car, he sold all his
Oh
belongings, he had a
yeah.
whole following, and then the day after comes, and it's just like, oh shoot.
Yeah.
I'm sure shoot was not the word that he used, but nonetheless, And then he figured out why he was wrong, and he was off by like 3 weeks. And he said, "Don't worry, it's going to be next month at the same time." And so they went around, and he was wrong again. And
Mhm.
it does seem to me that these guys have a knack for being wrong.
Well, I have to admit something. I've never
Yes.
told anybody this,
Uh-oh.
anybody, but since 1990 is when I started. Every single prophecy about the world coming to an end, I have been the one to stop it every
Oh,
single time. Sometimes 3 or 4 a year, but I have stopped every single end time disaster
well,
until
thank
now.
you. We thank you for your
Oh,
service.
we, we thank you
And
for
and
your service.
and I predict and
I,
I predict, I prophesy here today that every single one from here until the day I die, I will stop.
I thank you for your service. Doesn't seem like quite sufficient considering what you're basically saying. Ansgar, I appreciate that. Thank you for your service. But is that really sufficient? Whereas his service appears to be stopping the end times.
Well, you know.
I mean, I don't want your worship. I don't want your, you know, your thankfulness, your appreciation. I just want to just help the world. And so I've just been quietly doing this behind the scenes, but I just wanted to let you, I guess, just come out and just let you guys know that I'm your savior.
I appreciate when we talk about breaking news on In Time. I have to admit we had thought smaller stories like the president's been impeached.
Yeah,
We've
you
gone to
know.
war with China. Those were the big ones in my book. But we have it now. We have, I guess, a messiah of sorts has outed himself, and he's been keeping the end times at bay. Um, Thank you, Jim. Yes, thank you for your service. I guess I'm at a loss. I'm going to have to parrot back Ansgar after
Right,
criticizing him.
right.
That's all I've got. So, all right. Well, we have a question, and I think we're going to have to start wrapping this up. So, Jim Majors, from the Iron Charioteer. What do you
Mhm.
think of Ralph Ellis, who says that Jesus was the real king? Jesus was a real king from Edessa, Syria, and had Egypto-Persian and Roman heritage. I haven't heard that one, so I don't know. I'm going to have to.
Uh, no, I really don't think there's a whole lot to that. That's like part of like the Mithraic cults, I believe. Claim that Jesus and Mithras are somehow the same. Um, so no, I don't really hold a lot of stock in that. And then now it's possible that some of the attributes are the same, but there's a lot of evidence that a lot of attributes of Jesus are pulled from different cultures and different traditions.
All right. Well, thank you, Iron Charioteer, for that, and thank you. Jim, thanks. The power of your stash. Don't let any women make you shave it. Well, I think if he gets 1,000 subs, he is going to shave it. I think that was a challenge that I recall, 1,000 subs, and so I would like to see. Yeah, he thinks people forgot 1,000 subs on his channel. We will link to his channel, but you can find him, Jim Majors. Find him on YouTube. If he gets 1,000 subs, he will shave it. I'm ambivalent about that, but just
It's like 5 years from now. It's fine.
yeah, the way he's been treated. But so I will say, I think we'll hit Ansgar if he's got any questions. But I do want to say before we wrap this up, it's important, I think, for people to realize when we talk about things like this and some of the other subjects that we try to discuss here. I like to think we think a little bit outside the box. But if you appreciate a channel that can bring to you the Messiah, which isn't very many channels on YouTube. I hope you'll consider becoming a patron or donating. Just the Messiah is when people say, "What does In Time have that other channels don't?" I think we've got the answer, and if you appreciate it, please consider being a patron and donating. We have now demonstrably been part of keeping the world, the end times, from, or at least we've platformed the person who's been doing it. So please do seriously consider. Uh, and good job, Jim. Thank you very much. Ansgar, did you have anything you wanted to say?
Yeah, sure. First of all, Jim, thanks for coming on the show.
Absolutely.
I am woefully undereducated when it comes to this particular topic of biblical prophecies, and this was a fascinating topic for me to listen in on. And I know I didn't contribute much, but to be quite honest, it was more interesting and more fascinating to let the big brains of this particular subject in the room talk about it. Um, but thank you for illuminating some things. It was very, very cool. The other thing
Absolutely.
is, for people listening, Jim Majors is criminally undersubbed. Please
Yes. Yes.
go sub to Jim Majors. We will add a link to his channel in the description on our channel, so make sure you come over to In Time and check the description. We will put a link to his channel. We will put a link to his Twitter. He makes really interesting content, and he just made a new intro, which is very cool. So, yeah.
Well, and anyone who I think this was absolutely delightful. So anyone who enjoyed this show, this is one of the reasons I wanted to have Jim on. He's really a lot of fun to have on. We're going to have him back, but also we were planning on having an after party, but unfortunately we have another obligation that we're going to have to tend to, so we cannot do an after party. Jim will be having an after party on his channel. Go to it, sign in. I'm sure he's going to have a hangout and have people join, but this was a show. I'm really sad that we're not going to be able to make the after party. That's just we wanted to host it, but we're not going to be able to. So that's unfortunate. Something's come up, but it's going to be a lot of fun, I think, and it looks like he's maybe getting the link ready for people.
And the link is actually in the live chat right now.
The link for the after party. Perfect.
Yeah, so go click that and head to the after party.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. Anybody who wants to come in is free to come in. So hope to see you there.
All right. Thank you very much, Jim. Thank you, Ansgar. Thank you to all our everyone who's contributed and everyone in the live chat who's been kicking up questions. We really appreciate it. Look forward to seeing you guys tomorrow, where we're going to be having on a special guest to discuss the environment.
Thank you guys so much for having me. I had a blast.
Fantastic.
Thank you.